Hello YouTube, welcome back to my FE 0% LTC. It's Jumpy23 here, and we've got Chapter 13 today. First thing that we're going to do is return to the Chapter 10 shop and buy a chest key. I realized that I would need this for Chapter 14, but I couldn't go buy it right before that map because a skirmish spawns on the shop after I complete Chapter 13. We now return to our regularly scheduled Chapter 13. We can finally buy Pure Waters, and I'll be taking enough for the rest of the game, which is 3. This is one more than graded Stickbot, but I didn't bother to look and see where he skimped compared to me. Chapter 13 is a route map where we need to pull out all the stops to get a good turn count, even undeploying Natasha. This is the only time that we do that all game. At least I have to deploy all of my flyers so Tana can get some XP. She farms on this map a little bit with the Horse Slayer. Despite being slightly smaller than most other mid-game maps, the absolute maze of rivers makes it difficult to cross this map with our strongest units like Seth and Duessel. Our only competent combatants that can easily cross rivers are Duessel and Cormag, but they won't be able to do everything, so Tana and Vanessa have to help. The map has a solid mix of bulky enemies and 2-range enemies, so it's difficult to enemy phase chunks all at once, as well as threatening effective weaponry against both Cormag and Duessel. For a casual player, there's also the very threatening long-range magic in the middle with Selena and the Sleep Troubadour, but I neutralize Selena very quickly, and as for the Troubadour, I just rig her to miss every turn. There aren't many side objectives on this map, but I'll note the ones that do exist. The village on the left has an absolutely essential barrier staff, and there's a mage toward the bottom right with an equally essential stealable Speedwing. Fortunately, that mage moves on his own because otherwise getting Colm over there would suck. There's also a village on the right with a talisman, and we could skip that, but we don't have to. The last thing I want to note is that I stole at least 90% of this clear from Kiwi. He deserves credit for revolutionizing FE8 0% as a whole, as well as for teaching me about weapon break strats. I'm saying all of this up front because I'm about to say some very unflattering things about Gerik shortly. Cormag could kill everyone in this area with an Iron Lance, but he uses a Steel Lance because it gives twice as much weapon XP. I need all of the Cavaliers to attack Cormag and not Duessel, who can't kill them. The ones near them are Sword Cavaliers, so Duessel needs to equip the Sword Slayer on enemy phase. After the Hand Axe breaks, he'll have so much avoid between the Forest and the Sword Slayer that the Cavs would rather suicide on Cormag. Ephraim equips the Axe Reaver here because he's in range of one Lance Cavalier and one Fighter. If they both hit him, he would die. He could have instead used the Dracoshield that Ewan brought last chapter, and indeed he eventually will, but not yet for AI manip reasons. Tethys dances Forde here, and I am so glad to finally have a dancer. Then Forde sets up Gerik's inventory for him to promote and go to town on this enemy phase. First, he'll be attacked by 4 1-range units, 2 soldiers and 2 cavaliers. The cavaliers are too bulky to die to a hand axe, hence the 8-use steel axe. Then he'll switch to a hand axe to counter the hand axe fighters, and in this way clean up the northeast of the map on turn 1. An annoying fun fact is that if you accidentally hit attack instead of item to use your hero crest, then Gerik will equip the steel blade, and there's no way to put the steel axe back in front, so you have to reset. Tana can survive a bolting from Selena with exactly 1 HP, which is great for drawing it away from Cormag and Duessel. She doesn't need her HP like they need theirs. This enemy phase is fairly unreliable. Cormag has a solid chance of failure. The Steel Lance's hit rates aren't too great, and if he takes too many hits, Selena will kill him. And he has to dodge sleep from a Troubadour with 36 hit. However, the real bitch of this map is Gerik, who's pretty unreliable on most enemy phases, and this is one of them. The right side of the map was just not kind to him with the weapon triangle composition. This turn he has to double 2 Iron Sword Cavaliers with a Steel Axe, and hit all 4 times. I guess I shouldn't complain too loudly because he at least starts in a great position to kill these guys, which none of our other super units have enough move to handle. However, talking about Gerik and move just makes me want to complain even more. I used to think this guy was Duessel too after watching Kiwi's LTC, but oh folks, how wrong I was. Unless you give Gerik a bunch of stat boosters, including the boots, he is not good. I said it. All he can do is hang around cleaning up unpromoted enemies like a slightly better Joshua. He hits Garm too late, and you don't have enough 15 aid units to shuffle both his ass and Duessel's around the map, and between the two, you'd rather pick Duessel. The only thing Gerik has going for him is 15 base speed to let him double endgame bosses with Garm, but I have different plans for the endgame bosses, so Gerik can fuck himself. I wrote that entire spiel and this enemy phase is still going. The density on this map is ridiculous. It starts with 44 enemies. But now it's finally wrapping up, and with the gauntlet thrown, we begin turn 2. I'm taking the left side of the map a bit slower than Graded Stick did because of Tana's XP and because I can afford to. Graded Stick visited the barrier village with Seth, which meant he basically had to full move Seth every turn, but I visit it with Cormag. Here Seth uses the Killer Lance to attack this Cavalier, while Cormag will use the Silver Lance to attack Selena. That's why he had the Steel Lance last turn. This was a bit of a weird choice and I maybe regret it. Either Seth needs to Killer Lance crit the Knight or Cormag needs to Killer Lance crit Selena. The former is more reliable if I'm being honest, but if I'm rigging anyway, the former happens on enemy phase and the latter happens on player phase, but this is what I chose. Dazla's massive 16 con comes in handy here as he can rescue drop Duessel, armor, horse and all, with just his super swole biceps. This rig is not for the boss kill of course, but for the following enemy phase. The boss kill is actually quite reliable. This is the first reliable boss kill since chapter 6, and it is the last reliable boss kill of the entire game. Welcome to Sacred Stones. I didn't have time to mention it when it happened, but Joshua needed silver swords for this turn. The fighter that he attacked was too bulky to kill, and the Cavalier also, he really likes having a silver sword to do enough damage to. The Cavalier that will attack him on enemy phase. So here's the Knight that Seth needs to crit. He needs to crit one of two, but he can at least afford to miss the other, so it's not too bad of odds. That Cavalier has a Dragon Spear. Duessel and Dazla block him from skewering Cormag here. It's also a droppable Dragon Spear, which will come in handy for ourselves later. Joshua had to hit 1 out of 2 silver swords on the Cavalier to set him up for Tana. It's surprisingly unreliable thanks to the forest and weapon triangle disadvantage. Speaking of weapon triangle disadvantage, Gerik was just facing a Steel Lance Cavalier with a Steel Blade, and his hit is not good there either. This Cavalier, though, has a Steel Sword, so Gerik's hit's a lot better in this case. Forde also pulls mid-60s hit with the short spear on this mage. If only he were a bit stronger, he could use the javelin for better hit, but Forde is ass. This Great Knight has a hammer, and will do serious damage to Duessel when he's holding a lance especially, so we definitely have to take him out on player phase. Cormag pulls him in range for that. Gerik deciding to get hit by every single enemy on this turn makes turn 4 much more unreliable. He doesn't have time to heal before then and he'll face a real chance of death. And that was the AI manip I was talking about by skipping Ewan's Dracoshield. If Ephraim had used it, the Javelin Cavalier would have targeted Seth instead, which would make him a pain to kill. Just want to say again how much I love Regan Leaf. One-shotting in chapter 13 with Lord bases. Oh. Joshua only needed to hit 1 of 2, but he decided to hit 2 of 2. Just for the heck of it. So Tana may not have needed the Horse Slayer there, but we don't use it up anyway. Cormag's positioning here is surprisingly exact. Most other tiles that he could stand, he draws over some enemy or other that I want to suicide on Duessel. He'll be fighting a lot of pegs for the next couple turns, so he chugs an elixir. And here is the whole reason I bought a hammer. Kyle sets up another 2-use javelin while helping handle this Cavalier. I only end up using one of these all game, and I already had one, but hey, it's neat. Fortunately, low HP enemies are bumped up the movement order, so by chipping this Cavalier with a javelin here, he'll suicide on Seth, unblocking the way for the guys behind to also suicide on Seth. At least Gerik can one-round this promoted enemy with a steel blade. That's about the only one he can handle all game. This mercenary has a Zanbato, but it's so pathetically weak, it has 15 might after the effective damage, that even if he had hit Duessel, it would be totally fine. Now I've got a bit of a break with nothing super interesting, so I'll talk about Tethys. She's a dancer, that's incredible. I wouldn't hit my staff rank targets without her, and I guess she actually dances somebody else like 2 or 3 times too. Yeah, I do wish she joined earlier, how can you tell? She might actually be overrated too, although not as much as Gerik is. On a lot of later maps, she'll be so far from the front lines that all she's good for is using 2 barriers in a single turn. That being said, she's still a dancer. You know, hard to complain too much. Ephraim and Seth don't really even need to move here, but it does make the enemy phase a bit more reliable. And considering it's unreliable enough, you know, we'll do it. We'll waste those APMs. Tana got 2 kills on this map with the Horse Slayer. She's already at level 9. She won't be able to get any XP for the next 2 chapters, but she'll just barely squeak in on level 10 in chapter 16. Duessel should have attacked this Troubadour from the left, so that Duessel could block him off from the Pegasus that might target him. However, Gerik has such low HP in this clear that it's fine. The Pegasus has a Javelin, so we don't want her to target Duessel, but Gerik will bait her over with his 7 hit points. So Colm chips this mage so that Gerik doesn't have to dodge another counter. And this is the whole reason that he drank a pure water on turn 1. Otherwise, Colm is one shot. I also just noticed that I get all 3 side objectives on this map in the very last turn, which is kind of fun. Duessel needed that low use Steel Lance so that he could break it here and switch to the hand axe behind it. This lets him kill the Knight, which is too bulky to die to a hand axe, and then the Shaman, which has 2 range so it can't die to a Steel Lance. Gerik has to dodge both Brigands since he didn't do enough dodging earlier. He doesn't have to dodge the Pegasus that will attack him at least, because it only does 4 damage. When you're trying to rig an enemy phase, pro tip, make the units move in orthogonal directions so that enemy movement RNG doesn't like mess things up. And that is chapter 13 in 4 turns. Thanks for watching.